I assumed it would be a typical night. With the exception of the creaks of the old floorboards under my pacing boots, the house was dead silent. The clock had struck midnight, and my wife Hannah still hadn't returned home. Even though I didn't want to accept it, my intuition was telling me something was wrong. Earlier, she had brought up a business dinner and dismissed it as ordinary, but there was an air of formality and rehearsal in her voice. Again, I took a quick look at my phone. There were no notifications. With each passing second, the ache in my stomach was fueled by the unease. In the living room, where it was dark, I waited as the wall clock ticked away with excruciating precision. I then became aware of her vehicle's distinctive sound as it pulled into the driveway at close to 2 in the morning. Chunks of my heart pounded against my ribcage. Was it relief that she had returned home at last, or fear of what I would find out? Couldn't tell. I stood motionless when the front door swung open. As she entered, the sound of her high heels on the hardwood floor was barely audible. The soft moonlight filtering through the windows cast a shadow on her. She stutter-stepped, clumsily adjusting her coat. I switched on the lights at that point. Her expression was one of complete disbelief. Hannah seemed to have seen a ghost. She was completely out of control. With a pale face and slightly parted lips, as if trying to find the right words, she staggered back a step. "Would you like to stay up late?" I spoke in a low, almost eerie tone. Sitting back in the armchair, I held a glass of scotch. Without averting my gaze, I stared intently into her eyes. With her throat acting like sandpaper, she forced herself to swallow. This dinner was for business, as I mentioned before. It was delayed. Even a slight tremor in her voice was audible to me. It was all captured. "Are you sure that's the name you're using?" I inquired while arching an eyebrow. In order to prolong the period of quiet, I sipped my drink slowly. To be honest, I've never seen a man's collar smudged with lipstick after a business dinner. Hannah's cheeks turned white. As if on autopilot, she reached down and brushed her red lipstick against her neck. As if swallowed whole, the space grew thick with the weight of whispered realities. Her voice quivered as she began to speak to Daniel. I abruptly cut them off. With great care, I placed my glass on the sofa table as I stood up. Even though my steps were deliberate and slow, my thoughts were racing. As I advanced, she retreated a step, as if the physical separation would protect her from my advances. "When you act like there's an explanation, you're insulting me. I told you I'll believe you." My rage and betrayal were palpable in every syllable, even though my voice was barely audible. "Identify him." Her mouth moved from open to closed and back again. Not a single thing. More powerful than any admission was the lack of sound. Smiling, she muttered, "I made a mistake." Her eyes filling with swelling tears. "Nothing came out of it, Daniel. It was foolish and I deeply regret it. End it already." These days, my voice is as icy and icy cold as glass. I fixed my gaze on her, fixed it squarely. I had adored this woman for a decade. I had shared aspirations with the woman with whom I had made a life. Suddenly, she had transformed into an unknown visitor to my house. I emphasized again that it was meaningless, and my chuckle was bitter and comical. "Is that an improvement in your opinion? That it held no value for you to the point that you were ready to sacrifice everything for it?" Now that she was crying uncontrollably, her makeup was smeared with her tears. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. There is a way out of this. Bye, my dear. Love." Like a slap in the face, the word struck me. Having secret affairs with your lover was never part of love. Coming home at 2 in the morning smelling like someone else's perfume wasn't love. Trust was the foundation of love, and she had broken it. Taking my coat off the coat hook, I strode past her. "Where are you going?" she said, her voice betraying her anxiety. I said, "Go," and turned around to leave. Leave it alone. That night I slept poorly. Instead, I just cruised aimlessly through the city, down the routes we'd been down countless times. My mind raced with lovely memories of better times, as if to taunt me. As time went on, the pain of betrayal intensified. However, my discomfort started to change into something else sometime in the wee hours of the morning. take action. I would not allow her to demolish me. She was in for a rude awakening if she thought our marriage was expendable. The place was dead silent when I got back. Or rather, Hannah pretended to be asleep. It was irrelevant either way. I was going to make plans. I pretended to be the patient spouse for a few weeks after that. I reassured her that I hoped we could mend fences and start over. I accompanied her to therapy and listened as she expressed her feelings of shame and regret. I hugged her while she sobbed, nodded, and reassured her. While all was going on, I was planning my vengeance. I started by collecting evidence. No matter what I could find, text messages, emails, images, you name it, because she thought I wouldn't scrutinize her closely. Hannah had been irresponsible. I was completely unprepared for her. After that, I contacted an attorney. Keeping track of our money and making sure all assets were in my name had always been my top priority. Making that choice paid off handsomely. I was able to safeguard my assets because to the solid prenuptial agreement we had signed. It was very satisfying to find the last piece of the puzzle. I located Matt, a coworker, who had been seeing her. It transpired to be a haughty, married coworker. I like to avoid direct confrontations. I chose to send his wife everything I had found in an anonymous manner instead. She should handle him. I waited after that. Unexpectedly, the day of reckoning came sooner than I had anticipated. The idea for a casual dinner gathering with friends came to me on a Saturday afternoon. In an effort to demonstrate her dedication to mending our marriage, Hannah eagerly consented. Unaware of what was ahead, she froze. She was the consummate hostess as our visitors arrived, grinning and laughing as if nothing was wrong. A subtle, contented grin danced across my lips as I observed her. I got up in the middle of the night to make a toast. I raised my glass in toast to fresh starts. Honestly, though, Hannah's grin wavered momentarily, but it was soon back on full display. She said something and clinked her glass against mine. Actually, I wanted to tell you something, I went on to say. A tale of desire and treachery. The atmosphere dimmed. When Hannah saw the direction this was heading, her panicked eyes widened. Daniel, I put up a hand to prevent her from continuing. Tell me what I need to finish, I said with a level but determined tone of voice. I looked to our companions. What I didn't expect was that the woman I've been dating for the past decade has been harboring secrets. She was looking at other possibilities as I was busy making a life for us. The chamber resounded with gasps. Hannah seemed to be wishing she could just vanish. I reassured her, though, and turned back to her. I have attended to all matters. Your little secret is out in the open. The divorce paperwork is complete, and the assets are safe. I almost forgot. Matt sends his thanks. To be honest, I'm not sure. His own consequences are now affecting him. As my remarks hit Hannah, her expression grew more glum. She was crying, but I couldn't help but feel terrible for her. The decisions were hers to make, and now she must live with the results. Guests left in startled silence as the party ended suddenly. I had had enough of Hannah's pleading with me. A peculiar calmness settled over the house as she gathered her belongings and departed. Although I had hoped for a different conclusion to our marriage, she insisted on this one. In the peace and quiet of my living room, I had a profound epiphany. Suddenly, I had complete freedom, allowing myself the freedom to rebuild, to begin anew, and to discover a soulmate who shared my commitment to integrity and honesty. And I refused to accept anything less than perfection this time.